Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon, one of the career readiness consultants with the Kent Intermediate School District, and I'm so delighted to have Samina Jangda with us today. She's a hairstylist, and I know that a lot of young people have a strong interest in this area, and we're so glad to have you, Samina.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. It's so exciting to talk about my craft.
Well, we are going to dig into it, and as we hear more about what your daily work is and even some of the training to get there, take us back to when you were 15 or 16, Samina. Did you think you'd grow up to be a hairstylist?
I had no idea that that's what I was going to be, actually. I so when I was probably freshman, sophomore in high school, I was really, really curious about interior design, actually. I knew I wanted to be in something creative, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I pursued an interior design class at my high school, which was really, really awesome that I had the opportunity. But it really took me getting to know myself a little bit better and thinking about what I liked to do as a hobby, actually, and taking that hobby and turning it into something I could do as a career. I had always loved doing hair and makeup on my family members or my friends before school dances, or even just practice on myself. So it took till I was a senior in college to realize that I wanted to be a hairstylist rather than pursuing another career in a traditional 4-year degree at a university. So it was interesting, but I definitely didn't expect it.
Yeah, and I think you bring up such a good point, Samina, is for young people to really study themselves. Where do you spend your time? What do you enjoy? That time just goes by really fast. And I love that you are already doing hair and makeup. And so, yeah, young people, what are you already doing? So that's great insight right there. Yeah, creatives. And I think that's can be a challenge for young people that are creative. How do you use that creativity in your daily work? So you were in high school, you took this interior design class, and there were components of it that you loved. And then did you go
Totally.
to college? Did you mention that you went to 4 year?
I did not.
Okay, so it's
No,
4 year
I
high
I
school.
was
Yes,
yeah,
4 years of high
for high
school is where
school,
you,
and then rather than going to a university, I went to a trade school instead. So out of my 250 person class in high school, I was probably one of 3 or 4 that didn't go to a traditional university, which is a little intimidating when you see those numbers of everyone in your class going to a 4-year college and you're not. So going to a trade school wasn't as popular as you would think it is. But I would say you learn so much. You can get a jump start on your career by going to a trade. It's really great.
I love that you're sharing that, Samina. It's so important for young people to understand who they are and get the education that they need to do what they are doing, not what everybody else is doing, or that there's some
Yes.
societal expectations. So I love that. So when you finally decided that you wanted to go into hair and makeup, and that field is called cosmetology, but as you mentioned before we got started, the hairstylist is more modern term. So
Yeah.
what would you like for young people to know about that, just terminology?
Terminology. So what I have for my profession is a cosmetology license. And what that gives me is the capability to cut, color, style hair, and apply makeup. So gaining that license, that sets me up for my career. That gives me the baseline of everything that I need. But I would say the more modern term for a cosmetologist is a hairstylist or hair cutter. There are lots of terms for it. I'd say hairstylist is most common though.
What would you like to say to young people that think, well, I've practiced so much, I could just do this without getting that license? Help them understand why that's important and what the law is.
So it's really important to be licensed because a lot of the things you don't realize are how sanitary you need to be. That's a really big part of your education is learning about bloodborne pathogens and being really sanitary with all your tools because you can spread diseases really easily because it's a super hands-on job. You're constantly touching people. So you really don't want to transfer anything from one person to the next because then you're held liable. So the education behind that is so important because you just don't know it until you learn it. That's something you just have to learn.
I think that's important. And obviously when you're let's dig into your training. How do you even decide what school to go to? Because there's so many options. And what was that process like for you?
There are tons of options, and when I first started looking at schools, it's pretty overwhelming, honestly, because you look at schools that are a lower price range, and then you look at schools that are at a higher price range, and you're like, well, it seems like the higher one is the better option. So myself personally, I ended up going to Aveda, the Downtown Institute, Douglas Shea. And I would say after going through it, I don't think it's necessary to go with the most expensive option, because really what you learn in school is sanitation and really everything you need to be licensed. All the real world experience that you learn is going to be after school. So the school you go to really doesn't matter that much, which is something I wish I would have known going into it. But sometimes you just don't know. But looking back at it and hearing and talking to other people that went to different schools, it's not necessary to go to the most expensive one.
Yeah, I think that's important for young people to hear because, again, the reason for the school is to be trained to pass the state license. And so, like you say,
Yes,
some of that environment that is obviously when you're seeking schools, you want to be a very nice environment. And obviously, you want opportunities to
totally.
do hands on experiences with clients coming in. But what are some other things they should be really looking at when they're considering schools? Is it the staff that's there, just the vibe? Like what do you think should be some of those kind of benchmarks for kids to consider when they're thinking about it?
I would say the staff is super important because those are the people that are educating you. You want to make sure that they are invested into you as much as you're invested into them. So I would definitely advise taking a tour of multiple different schools. That is a great option to get a feel for the school. You can see the students that are there. Even go get a service at a school and see what it's like. If you enjoy it, that's a really good thing to do, is just get a service, because it's almost kind of like a sneaky way to get a vibe for the place rather than taking a tour. Because with tours, they're going to show you all the best parts, right? So just like go get a haircut or a blow dry, something like that, and see what you think. See if you like it. And it doesn't hurt to check it out.
I think that's great. I think a lot of young people and even maybe their parents don't realize that that's an option that cosmetology schools um, give people from the community an opportunity to go in and get a low cost service. And what a
Totally.
great way, like you say, to kind of get a sneak peek at what you're going to be investing a lot of money in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as far as paying for your school, I don't know personally, and is it something that student loans can pay for, or how are ways that young people are paying for cosmetology school?
Yeah, so myself, I applied for a student loan and I was able to, it was about half of my tuition. So half of my tuition was covered over student loans and the other half I had to pay monthly while I was in school. Um, the cost of my schooling was around 26,000. So it's pretty costly. Uh, and depending on your parents' income, that has a big fluctuation on how much you get for student loans. So it's totally dependent on the individual. And there are plenty of options as long as you talk to the school and whoever works in their finance department, they'll figure something out that works best for you and your family. So as long as you're open and honest and you ask questions, that's the biggest part. And figuring out how you're going to pay for it or what you're going to do and how much it costs and what that looks like. The biggest thing is just asking questions and being openly honest.
Yeah, I think that's great that there's they do have financial aid departments and that you need to talk to them and work that out. That's helpful.
Mhm.
So when you went off to school, again, that terminology is trade school, was your family like really supportive? Did you have to do you have other cosmetologists in the family, other hairstylists in the family, or was this kind of you paving your own way?
So my family was super, super supportive, which makes the world of a difference. And I'm really appreciative of that. And they would have been supportive no matter what I did, which is great. But I do have an aunt that is a hairstylist. So there is one in the family, but I come from a family that does more eclectic things. We're not like a traditional everyone is going to a four-year university. So it was very nice to have the support of my parents. I did go to school with people that didn't have support from their parents. So oftentimes, people that don't have that, it's you just need to find good friends, really. Find friends that support you, find friends in that industry or that are going to school with you, because they'll lift you up and they'll take care of you. So even if your parents don't support you, you'll find people that will. So
Yeah, it's really important because this is your life, right? And obviously your
yeah.
parents probably observed you being that creative young person, and
Oh yes.
so it wasn't a surprise for them when you chose this.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'm so glad you had that support. So once you decided on Aveda, what were those beginning days like? Were you like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything yet, and how am I going to figure this out? A lot of young people have that anxiety of like, how am I going to know what to
Hmm.
do? So kind of put us back in your young
Yes.
self and in those early days. Help normalize that experience.
So it was very, very intimidating because the way the school is set up, there are multiple classes. There are different levels of classes. So there are people that are further along in their education than I was when I started. There's not just one class at a time. So going in, there are people that have already been there for a few months and they know the whole process. They know what everything's like. And I'm walking in and I don't know where anything's at or who to talk to or who's in my class, who's my teacher. So that was very intimidating. And I think that oftentimes this generation struggles with social anxiety and putting yourself into a new environment and not being worried about it. So I would say the biggest thing is just talk to people. Introduce yourself, ask where they're from or what they're excited about. It's the best part about school is getting to know people and having people that I was really comfortable talking to. It made me look forward to it on a daily basis. So I would say just, be true to yourself. Don't try to change yourself or yeah, don't try to change yourself for anybody else. It's just get to know people and make friends. It's the best. It's intimidating, but it's well worth it to invest in a good conversation.
I would think when you're at a trade school like this, you've all of a sudden found your people. Like everybody there has the same interest and passion. I would think that you would develop some friendships out of that.
Yes, I definitely did, but there are people that you probably won't get along with, which is kind of true with anything, but you definitely find people that are, sometimes people are more interested in hair or makeup. So it fluctuates, but you're definitely in a world full of like-minded.
Yeah, there may be probably at some level of competitive nature, I would think, just naturally. Like
Yeah.
people want to be better than other people.
And I would say with it being a heavily women dominated industry, that tends to lead to more intimidation in itself or more competitiveness. I would say try not to let that get to you. It's easy to let it get to you because women can be intimidating, but we're really all there for the same reason. So if you think about it that way, it's great. You're there to make friends, and I have friends from cosmetology school that I still talk to, and we'll go over some stuff like, hey, do you know how to do this, or what do you think about this? So you can make some long-term friends from it. So as long as you just be yourself.
So what were the classes like? Was it a lot of chemistry when you're thinking about hair color? I mean, are you learning like putting some of that science to use that you learned in high school? Tell us about the classes and what you want young people to know
Yes.
about that.
So the classes varied a ton. We had some note-based classes where we were just looking at PowerPoints and writing down notes. A lot of those were kind of bloodborne pathogens, diseases, talking about lice or things that you find in hair. If you see scabs on someone's head, we have to know what those things are and whether or not we can proceed with a service based on that. We had classes on hair cutting. So we would go over the process of the haircut and then we would do the haircut on a mannequin head, which was really fun and exciting because you're like, oh, I get to cut hair. So we had multiple different hair cutting classes on different styles of cutting. Um, we had color theory classes where, we really start with the basics of the color wheel. and just knowing what the color wheel is and primary color, secondary colors, it brings you back to like elementary school art of these basic color concepts. So we started there, and then we would gradually build up from there once we felt comfortable with the knowledge that we had gone over. But we did use chemistry in our color theory classes, which was really nice. And funny enough, I never took chemistry in high school. I took every science but chemistry. So we used chemistry, a lot of color theory. Yeah, chemistry was a big part of it because we're working with a lot of chemicals, not just with hair color. I mean, with relaxers and perms and all the stuff. But I would say the very beginning of my schooling, the first 10 weeks was in a classroom. It was mostly note taking and going over slideshows and really just talking. That was the big part of it. And once that part was over, we moved out onto the floor and we were able to take clients, which is really, really exciting. So we took clients, and then we had 1 day a week where we had class, which was cool because we still had that theory day where we could go over stuff, say we had a haircut that we were confused about, we could ask questions. Our educators would help us out with any questions that we had, which is super awesome. So that was the majority of my schooling, was out on the floor taking clients, and then one day of class. So once you get to the end, which my training was a little different because I graduated during the pandemic. So the end of my schooling was a little funky because I had to go virtual. But no, most of the time, most of the schooling, you're out on the floor taking clients, and you have one day of class, which is really cool.
And you mentioned the first 10 weeks were in the classroom. Then how long is the whole program for young people to kind of have an expectation?
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. My program was the full-time program. It was 11 months. So you're there Tuesday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. roughly. There's also a nighttime program, which was, I think, 5 to 10 p.m. And that was 14 months. So really, in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty fast program. I graduated high school, and a month later, I started my career at cosmetology. And that was about a year. With the pandemic, it was a little bit longer. And then I was able to jump right into my career, which is super awesome. My peers are still getting their 4-year degree, and I'm working in my career, which is awesome.
Yeah, I've definitely met young people that's what's attractive about trade schools. They don't want to go 4 years. They want to get hands-on and get right in there and, start earning money. What other benefits do you think that you'd like young people to know about trade school that maybe you didn't know or you learned after you got started?
I would say trade school is often knocked down as being a cop out or an easy way out because you're not committing to a 4-year degree. But I think if it's something that you really love to do, it just accelerates the process of you getting to do what you want to do full time. So I would love to get a business degree, but right now I'm doing what I love. And while I do that, I could still go back to school. So for me, it didn't make sense to get a 4-year degree and then go into cosmetology. So I would say trade school, it's kind of like the underdog sometimes. It's really awesome, and I definitely suggest it if you're a creative person and you just really want to get a jump start on your career, and not for the money's sake, just for the sake that you love to do it. Because if you're driven by money, it's probably not going to end very well.
Yeah, I love you're giving such great insights and wisdom so far, Samina. Thank you. So you get your degree or you get your license. Was that test hard? Like, how does that work?
It was stressful. It was very stressful. So the state board exam for cosmetology is 2 parts. There's a practical and a theory. So the practical is where we have to perform services on a mannequin head. So it's about a 3-hour exam, and you're watched the entire time. And you don't know what you make a mistake on until you're done. So you just have to keep going through the process. You can't stop. There's no breaks. You just go through it. And schooling helps you so much with that training. And I would say if you're looking at schools, make sure it's a school that trains you well on the state board exam. Because I went to a school that did train us really well for that. So that's really important to pass that. So there was the practical. And once you pass the practical, you have a theory exam. The theory exam, it differs for everyone. So preparation for it can be a little challenging. You kind of have to know a really broad variety of topics, which makes sense, but it's stressful. And after the theory, you find out right away if you passed or not, which is like, all right. So I had to travel for both of mine. I traveled to Lansing for both tests. I think that varies. It depends on when they're just available, honestly. But I passed my state board exam the first time I took it, which is really awesome. So after that, I was able to pursue a job, and it was really great.
It's very exciting as a young person, like you say, a year after graduation of high school to be starting your career. Did you get to kind of pick where you wanted to go for your first job? Did you get recruited? Like, did you know what salon you thought maybe work at? How did that decision go?
Where I ended up, it kind of happened by chance, which is really awesome. So a friend of my mom's, she works with an Aveda salon. She works for Aveda, and Aveda is a company that they make shampoo, conditioner, color, all of that. It's a professional company. So she reached out to me and said that the place I'm working at now was hiring. So she sent me my current boss now, my boss's phone number, and said, hey, reach out to him. They're hiring. Just send him a message. No big deal. So I sent him a message and just mentioned, hey, I heard you were interviewing. I would love the chance to have an interview with you. And we had a phone interview, and that went well. So we had a technical interview where I went in and did 2 haircuts in front of him. So I did a female cut and a men's cut. And then about a week later, I was hired, and I've been there ever since. I've been there for over a year now, which is really awesome. But, it wasn't a place I had even been looking at. It just happened by chance, which I think is the best way it could have been.
Good for you. We have about 6 or 7 minutes left. What would you like young people to know? They like to know, I guess, share with them what your favorite part is and maybe something that you don't like, so they have that side of the coin.
Okay, I would say my favorite part is I get to meet and talk to so many different people that it gives you such a broad view on the world. And, it's really humbling when you talk to that many different people. And it's really rewarding to, getting to see people on a regular basis. You get to know them and their lives. And it's just so touching to be able to provide a service for somebody and make them feel so good about themselves. Being in this industry, we're solely working with people's egos. We're making them feel good. We're making them feel confident. That's the best thing about my job, for sure. Yeah.
Is there any part of it that's kind of a grind?
I would say sometimes it's a little stressful because we're not an hourly job. So our money isn't guaranteed, which can be frustrating sometimes when people cancel, or if we have a no-show, when somebody doesn't show up to their scheduled appointment, or if we just aren't busy that day. So I would say it can be stressful in terms of money, because you can make really great money, but it can also fluctuate quite a bit. So you have to be really smart with your money and make sure you save it, because it's not guaranteed if like you would be on a salary job. So, you can see your schedule fall apart in a day, and that can be stressful.
Yeah. What kind of inside tips would you like to give her on that, as far as your money management and how you've kind of started doing that in the last, year?
Yeah, I would say having a budget is a really good place to start. Really nailing down what you need to spend versus what you want to spend is a really big difference. So, whether you're living with your parents or not, what money you need to spend on rent, if applicable, food, if you can go out, you need to budget for staying in and paying rent and your phone bill. And if you have Netflix or all that stuff, if you have a car payment. So really just nailing down what you need to spend and going from there on what you can spend on what you want. So a budget is really, really important.
And it's so impressive to hear someone as young as you are, knowing those realities and that you're supporting yourself by, like you say, managing your money so that you can do what you want to do. That's fantastic. What would you like young people to know about your industry that you think maybe is a myth? Like, no, it's not really like that. Like some of those perceptions that maybe you had even before going in that are different.
I would say a common misconception is that hairstylists are really, really mean or catty when you work in that industry. Because it's intimidating going into a salon, even if you don't work there, even if you're just a client and there's a bunch of women that are all done up, like their hair's done and their makeup's done. And you're like, oh, it's kind of scary. So I would say, we're a lot nicer than we might seem. And I've gotten to know that a lot better with going to classes and events and just being around other hairstylists. And it's like, no, we're all nice, this isn't scary or intimidating, it's great. So I would say usually people think we're not as nice as we are.
That's so funny because I recently had to go into a salon because my personal hairstylist had broken her ankle. So I had to find someone else for a month. And I felt that when I walked in. That's so funny that you verbalized that. It was like I walked in, like everyone was staring at me because I was probably a new face to them. And it took me a minute. And I'm like a 55-year-old woman who was like, oh, so it's just funny that you just verbalized that because I experienced that. So as far as your career, you're loving it. You're learning all the time. Is there anything that you've already learned about the industry? You're like, oh, that's something I didn't know. That's like you mentioned a business degree. Do you see yourself owning your own salon someday? Or do you like the ability to have the freedom to just kind of do what you got to do and head out at the end of the day?
Right now, I'm really liking the ability to just do hair and leave and call it a day. Eventually down the road, I'm not sure because owning a business it's a lot of work. And I see that firsthand with my boss. So it's like, all right, I see how much work you're putting in and I don't know if I want that. So right now it's very nice to have the capability to just do work and go home and leave it.
Yeah, I would think that would be awesome. And that you have a license and a skill set that you can go anywhere in the world and do your job.
Yes.
Now, would you have to get licensed, like if you went to California, for example, if you decided you wanted some sunshine, would you have to then pass their state license? Is that how it works? Or is that a national license that you have?
So it depends on how long I've been in the industry. So each state has a different amount of required hours. So Michigan's 1,500 hours. I believe California is 1,700. That could be wrong. But if I've been in the industry for so many years, I can just transfer my license. But right now, since I've only been in it for a year, I would have to take their state board exam. But super awesome that it can be transferable. That's one of the really great perks about this job is that you can really go anywhere and make it work.
I think that's a fantastic thing about your industry, and that you are completely autonomous and you get to do what you have to do.
Yes.
And so when these Michigan winners hit you, you could say, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere.
I'm out of here.
Once you have those hours. Well, we've reached our 30 minutes, Samina. It's been so great talking to you. What kind of final word of wisdom would you like to give young people who are considering being a hairstylist?
I would say if you're gonna do it, you gotta dive in, fully commit to it and immerse yourself in the industry. Because if you don't, it's not worth it. You gotta dive in and really envelop yourself and everything that you can learn because there's so much out there that if you keep going and keep learning, you're only going to maximize yourself and others too, really. So I would say just go all in if you're going to do it.
That's great advice. You've been a terrific role model today, and helping young
Thank you.
people understand how this all works, and hopefully built some confidence in them to step out, especially if maybe their family is hesitant, but that they have to do them and use those creative skills to really bless other people, like you said, to really help people feel good about themselves every day. What a beautiful career. I think that would be just amazing. So thank you, Samina.
Thank you.